Hi everyone, my name is Ade, and again, it's me on Eat, Pray, Purpose. And today I'm super excited, right? I managed to drag my famous, wonderful mentor that I talk about every single day. Actually, she's my mentor, she's my coach, she's my sister, she's my friend. She's the person I disturb probably every other day. This is Olawunmi Brigue. Welcome, Olawunmi. I knew she was going to do that. I knew she was going to do that. Welcome. So I asked her, I was really nervous asking her to come on the show because I just thought, would you want to come? And I did, and surprisingly enough, this is months ago, and she was like, yes, whenever you're ready, I will definitely come on the vlog, and I was super excited with that. But I took a lot of my learning from her, and one of the things I want to point out is, I tell you this all the time. I say that when I walked into your house that January morning or that January afternoon, what struck me was what I saw. It wasn't, and that was what I think allowed me to hear the words that you were speaking to me that day. It was really what I saw.
Are you saying if I was living in a shack, you would have heard it?
Well, probably, let's be honest. If you want, what I don't want to do is say part of your story. I kind of want you to say your story yourself. But to be honest, right, if I had come in there and, I keep saying, I remember walking in, I remember your son opening the door. And that memory is so strong in my mind. I remember walking in, him opening the door. I remember the words you spoke. You're like, oh yeah, I was busy in the kitchen. My son came to open the door, blah blah blah. And then we sat down, we started talking, and it was just. I think it sunk in a lot more as I looked around my environment. So I'm gonna let I call her PL. I'm gonna let PL tell you her story and as much as you want to tell. So if you just.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to
Thank you for coming.
You know quite a bit about my own story, especially since we went to the same university. Mm-hmm. And for me, growing up, I live a fairly sheltered life, in the sense that I had a very strict mother, mm-hmm. And obviously in a home full of love, so I can't fault that. But one of the things that obviously all of this is in retrospect, so yeah. I didn't know any of this going through my own life.
Right.
Backtrack a little bit, I got born again in 91. I was probably about, I'm not going to tell you how old I was. People are very quick at working these things out, aren't they?
I agree.
But anyway, I was, secondary school and so on, got born again. But I didn't really have the opportunity to be able to be mentored in Christianity. Right. So I didn't really start walking with God until 97. But what I didn't realize was, I grew up in a home where I had been exposed in terms of extended family, to people, well, women particularly, having children outside of wedlock.
Right.
So I grew up thinking, I never want this to happen to me.
Right.
And my own sister that I love so much, she's everything to me, got pregnant when she was, I think, 17, 18. Right. Obviously, she's doing well and everything now, but it was shattering for me, watching everything. I know how it is in Nigeria. It was a big mess. And I went through that, and I thought, this will never happen to me. And so I built walls around myself, and I thought, I'm never letting any guy, even if I date someone, and eventually I started dating, it was always about being very sheltered, barely any emotions and so on. And so I went through all that, built up my own walls, yeah. And to a degree it worked until I realized later on that no matter how many walls you build externally, no matter how much you try and use willpower, if certain things are planted and rooted in your heart, eventually they will find a way, they'll find expression. And that's what the Word of God teaches us. It says a good man out of the good of his heart will bring out good things. Yeah, so it will always come out. A lot of times the things that we do is to try and safeguard ourselves, but it wouldn't work. Right. Eventually it will come out. So trying to safeguard myself, living with this fear. I didn't realize at the time that it was fear that was rooted. I'm like, I just can't. so when I finally, got to university, got really deep into God, TRF. So, even became a pastor as a student in TRF, started a women's ministry and all of that. So it got to the point where I think like I said, eventually it's going to get you. So my guard went down, and what happened was, you think, okay, this is probably the safest relationship I can go into, and whatever is rooted, it will bear fruit. So I found myself, you can't really find yourself pregnant. Let's just say, even leading up to that, I was already really messed up in my mind, because the guilt. Just immediately I just thought, I'm finished, as in I'm damaged goods. God can never, how can someone who claims to be doing so much for God, and whom other people hold in high regard, end up here? So essentially, so I got pregnant, and I thought, okay, that's it. And I remember I was, it's a very long story, but I remember the turnaround for me started on a particular day, and I was at home. I think I was probably about 7.5 months pregnant, and I had obviously, shielded myself from everyone. I didn't want to see anybody. I wasn't talking to anybody, and I sat in my room at home, in my parents' home in Lagos, in Nigeria, and I was just saying to God, well, this is it. So what do I do now? This is the end of my life. And I will never forget what God said to me. He said, he basically said, paraphrase, when you're finished feeling sorry for yourself, let me know. I said, why should I feel sorry for myself? This is it. There's nothing, all these big plans. And obviously, growing up in a ministry like TRF, there was always an emphasis on the calling of God, about purpose. And I thought, there's no more purpose. Let me just find somewhere to hide myself and, live a mediocre life until whenever I have to go home, and so on. And he said, listen, all I want you to do is just get out a notebook, and I want you to write down exactly where you want to be a year from now.
Wow.
And I thought, a year from now I could be dead. That was very dramatic. And he said, just write it down. What do you want to be doing, and so on, etc. And I did that. So I started at first, obviously I was petrified, and I thought, okay, have a child, and then maybe try to look for a job, and all that. But the more I allowed myself to dream, so I just said, let me even dream. Let me even look at what this future would look like, even if it's a year from now. And at the time, I was living in Lagos, as I said, and I said, okay, I want to be in London, and I want to be working, and I want to be earning this amount of money, and I want to be doing this. And I wrote all these things down. And at the time, I was like, for me, it looked as impossible as anything you could ever imagine. As in, I just wrote, but there was something about just writing it down. I know that God's words, comforted me, and He gave me, it's like pouring hope into a hopeless situation, and that gave me the strength to at least believe. And I said, so what do I do now? He said, nothing. You just stay in the place of thanksgiving. And I remember those days, I used to, I still do, wake up. I think at the time I would get up at 3 a.m. and just pray. So I didn't know what to pray for, so I was just praying in the spirit and worshiping. Praying in the spirit, worshiping. And then as I began to do that, He began to show me things in the Word. He would take me to scriptures, promises, opening up my eyes. So anything He showed me, I would write it down and begin to declare those scriptures, and also the confessions as well. So that was what started the journey for me. And I read this book, by Charles Capps, Faith and Confession. So I was like, what? Are you serious?
Yep.
Right? The words I actually speak,
matter, right?
So I began to change all of that. So I said, well, it's even good. I'm not talking to anyone at the moment. So the only words I'm speaking are the words I've written down. And the thing is, and this is what I believe that when God does something, it should be effortless. If you're striving, if you're toiling, I really doubt if God is in it,
Right.
because the process. I'm not saying the process will be easy. The process might be tough, but when things start to unfold, they tend to unfold like that, easily and effortlessly. So the process of getting to the point where I could actually believe, and the whole the battle you're really fighting is against yourself, against the things that you have believed about yourself. And when everything started to unfold, and remember, by this point I was probably about 8 months pregnant. I had traveled to the United Kingdom before when I was about 8 or 9. After that, I had tried to, because my sister lived in the UK at the time, and I had tried to visit as a student in university, and I had been turned down like 3 times.
Wow.
So I had finished school, I had finished university, I wasn't working, I was heavily pregnant. It wasn't like I was, I was going to study or anything. There was no reason whatsoever for them to give me a visa. But God said, you want to go to London, right? You need to get a visa. So go and get a visa. And so went to the embassy. The first time I went round, the appointment date I was given was about 3 weeks after I would have delivered. So that, because they would give an appointment and ask you to come back for an interview. But then, so I went back home. I said, look, I tried. He said, go and get a visa. I can't even get a visa before, I give birth. So, I'm just going to leave it. And he said, do you trust me? I said, oh, okay, fine, if you say so. A week after that, probably a couple of days, someone just randomly came to my house, and someone that I had been talking to through the whole process. And the person said to me, do you know that all of a sudden that the British High Commission, they've changed the way they operate. So you don't have to get an interview date, they're actually doing walk-ins. And that was the first time that I had known of that they were doing that system. So you literally walk in, obviously the queues were horrendous. People would queue from the night before. You queue, and if you can get in, so they would take a limited number of people. If you can get in, then you have your interview straight away, and you either get accepted or refused. I thought, really? What? They've never done that before. So next day, got all my documents together, went to the embassy, didn't get in. Actually, I took one of my cousins, who's a guy, I thought somebody to help me muscle people out of the way or something. I didn't get in. Second night, called him, this was deep into the night. Didn't get in either. So I go home, I said, look, it's not working and everything. But he said, why don't you go back? He said, as long as you're going to be relying on other people, then I can't help you. So what do you mean by that? So I called my cousin again. I said, actually, I'm busy tonight. So for me, I was on my own. So, I went back, and it was the night where I was by myself that I actually got in. And there's a story behind that of, I don't like to spook people, but there was a clear incident of angelic visitation that I have described. But anyway, I got in, and the person that interviewed me, I kid you not, did not look up once, because I was pregnant. I was obviously pregnant. And like, well, you're going to have a baby in a month or something. I think by this time, I was probably 3 weeks away from giving birth. So she would question why, I said, no, come back and apply once you've had the baby. But she never looked at it, just looked at the documents. Okay, your sister lives there, and so on. And she just said, there you go, 2-year multiple.
Wow.
So, got the visa and go home. I was like, okay, this is really happening. But the thing is, I could go on. So I arrived in the United Kingdom, and over a series of incidents, and within 3 months, so one of the things that I had despaired about, and my mom kept hammering on, was, how are you going to take care of the baby? It's not like Nigeria where there's this auntie there and that. How will you by yourself care for a baby, go to work, and so on? But I have to say this one, because it's one of the amazing things that God did. So I had, came to the UK, gave birth within a couple of weeks. I would have given birth the day I arrived.
Wow.
But I was 2 weeks overdue, thank God. So I gave birth 2 weeks after I arrived, and I gave birth to, my daughter Maxine. And I think a couple of weeks after that, I was walking in the park, and I was lost in thoughts. I wasn't thinking, and I hit this woman that was walking in front of me. So I apologized, I'm really sorry. And she's like, oh, it's okay. And she said, that's a newborn baby. What's your name? Where do you live? She happened to be a Nigerian woman, and we struck up a conversation. And it so happened that she had worked in a nursery for years, maybe 15 years, and she had literally just resigned to start her own child-minding business.
Oh, wow.
So my daughter was the first baby she ever took on, and it wasn't just some random child mind that, as in, I'm still in touch with her today. Maxine stayed with her for about 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Even through primary school, would take her to school and everything. So that was a God connection that happened. Within 3 months of getting to the UK, I started school. Everything a miracle, because I came with nothing. I had zero coming into the UK. Was able to enroll in school, get a student visa, pay school fees and all that, and I started the program going into teaching within 3 months. Because I think by Christmas started the PGC, postgraduate certificate, to be able to teach in September. By Christmas, the first one in the whole cohort at my university, I got a job, because you can get a job while you're training. Yeah. So I was the first, like, what? How did you do it? And it wasn't because I was the best, It's never been because I was, the most qualified or anything. So series of events, everything back to back, everything. And when I went back and I compared, everything I had written down happened, and in some cases better than I had written down.
Okay, so this is amazing, and I can see it's really interesting because, as you said, it was either what you had written down or better than, which is so God. And I've seen exactly the same thing in my own transformation journey as well, like just living in supernatural effortlessly. But one of the questions I do want to ask you, because I'm totally curious about this, is what gave you the courage to even go through with the pregnancy? Because the way you say, it was over, there's a lot of guilt and all of that there. My first point is, has she actually carried the baby? Where did the courage to do that come from?
To be honest with you, I don't know. I don't know. I can't put it to any kind of moral obligation. I can't say, you can't have an abortion. It wasn't anything like that. It wasn't some moral high ground, because obviously at the time I didn't have any. If I had thought I had moral high ground before, the legs had been cut out of that. So I'm not really sure. I think it was just not an option.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, just because it's going to be hard does not mean I should take the other way out. I think it was just where I had locked my mind, and I knew that it's going to be very difficult. And you know how it is in Nigeria. It's not. I wasn't like 16 or anything. I had finished university, so it wasn't the end of the world, right? But just getting pregnant. You're even having sex, So what? How did I get in there? So it was, for me, it was just making that decision from the start that yes, I made a mistake, but let's not add to it, shall we?
Right. Okay.
And also rightly estimating how difficult it was going to be.
Right.
If you see what I mean. So I didn't play it down. I didn't think, okay. I knew it was going to be difficult, and I accepted that. I didn't run from that. Mm-hmm. But I thought, however difficult it might be, if I sacrifice anything, in fact, what I thought I would sacrifice was maybe my relationship with God, or my walk with God, or any success that I may have had in life. But that aspect of it, I was not willing to. Maybe no, I don't know if willing is the right word. I just thought it's happened, and let's just face it and move on.
Right. And
I think that's
amazing. But I just think it just goes back to, as you said, what goes into your mind as well. Because I'm not even going to lie. If that had happened to me, outside of like there wouldn't even be an option. Like at the time where I was mentally at university a few years back, I wouldn't even consider like having the baby. But I think as you said, just images you had seen, even though there were negative connotations, these women had obviously been strong, carried their pregnancies through, and maybe somewhere that gave you. I don't know.
No, absolutely. No, you're right. Because if I had, for example, if I had a big sister that had told me, oh, actually I got pregnant one night, had an abortion, that would have sown a seed. Exactly. For me. That would have been easier for me to take that step.
Right.
But there was no precedence. Right. And I just thought you just deal with it, be strong, face it. And move on. I think that was it. But it wasn't any kind of moral high ground for me.
Okay, so guys, I just feel like we need to keep going here. But what I'm gonna do is, so that the episodes aren't too long, we're gonna end this episode here and pick up in part 2, where you get to hear more of PL's story. So please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Facebook. And thank you so much for just listening to this. Bye.